What if I told you that two soda companies once fought so viciously that one literally changed its 99-year-old secret formula and caused riots in the streets, and that the other company went to space, hired spies, and accidentally helped end the Cold War? Stick around because this war got absolutely insane. Picture this. It's 1985. Coca-Cola, the most valuable brand in America, announces they're changing their formula. The formula that's been secret for 99 years. The taste that defined American culture. They're replacing it. Gone. Forever. And the reason? They're losing a war to Pepsi. What happened next was total chaos. People hoarded old Coke. They protested in the streets. Some claimed they were going through withdrawal. A psychiatrist compared it to the grief of losing a family member. This wasn't just about soda. This was about identity, nostalgia, and two companies that had been at each other's throats for nearly a century. The Coca-Cola versus Pepsi war is one of the longest, most intense, and most personal business rivalries in history. We're talking about celebrity endorsements worth millions, blind taste tests that changed marketing forever, explosive advertising campaigns, and corporate espionage that led to prison time. These companies didn't just compete for customers. They competed for cultural dominance. They fought to define what America drank, how people socialized, and what it meant to be cool. This war created modern advertising. It invented the celebrity endorsement industry. It changed how companies market products forever. Today, you're getting the complete story of the Cola Wars. From a morphine-addicted pharmacist's accidental invention to Michael Jackson catching on fire to Pepsi literally going to space. This is about way more than two brown fizzy drinks. This is about capitalism, culture, and how two companies spent over a century trying to destroy each other while making billions. And trust me, the real story is way wilder than you think. Let's go back to where this all started. 1886, in Atlanta, Georgia. A pharmacist named John Pemberton was trying to create a cure for headaches and morphine addiction. Ironic, since John himself was addicted to morphine after getting wounded in the Civil War. He mixed together coca leaves, cola nuts, sugar, and other ingredients in a brass kettle in his backyard. He was basically just experimenting, hoping to create something he could sell as a patent medicine. John took his syrup to a pharmacy and mixed it with plain water. It tasted okay, but nothing special. Then someone accidentally mixed it with carbonated water instead. The result was way better. Fizzy, sweet, and refreshing. John knew he had something. His bookkeeper, Frank Robinson, suggested the name Coca-Cola. The name came from two of the ingredients, coca leaves, which contained cocaine back then, and cola nuts, which had caffeine. Frank also designed the distinctive Coca-Cola script logo that's still used today. John started selling Coca-Cola at pharmacies as a brain tonic and cure for various ailments. This was normal back then. Pharmacies sold all kinds of weird concoctions claiming health benefits. Coca-Cola was marketed as a cure for headaches, tiredness, and even impotence. The original ads claimed it cured morphine addiction, which was deeply ironic since John was still addicted to morphine himself. In the first year, John sold about 9 glasses of Coca-Cola per day. He made $50 total, but spent $70 on advertising. Not a great start. John's morphine addiction got worse. He needed money for drugs. Asa also started bottling Coca-Cola in 1894, which was revolutionary. Before this, Coca-Cola was only sold at soda fountains. You had to go to a pharmacy or restaurant to drink it. Bottling meant people could buy it and take it home. This expanded the market dramatically. By 1895, Coca-Cola was being sold in every state in America. The distinctive contour bottle design came in 1915. The bottle was designed to be recognizable, even in the dark, or if it was broken. It became an iconic part of Coca-Cola's brand identity. Now let's talk about Pepsi. Pepsi was created in 1893 by a pharmacist named Caleb Bradham in New Bern, North Carolina. Like Coca-Cola, it started as a patent medicine. Caleb called it Brad's drink at first. Terrible name. In 1898, he renamed it Pepsi. The name supposedly came from pepsin, a digestive enzyme, and cola nuts. Caleb claimed Pepsi aided digestion and boosted energy. Again, This was standard marketing for the time. Every drink claimed health benefits. Pepsi grew steadily through the early 1900s, but they were always behind Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola had better distribution, better marketing, and more money. By 1902, Coca-Cola's revenue was $120,000 per year. Pepsi couldn't compete. The companies existed in parallel but weren't really rivals yet. Coca-Cola was the dominant soda. Pepsi was a regional alternative that most Americans had never heard of. Then Pepsi almost died. During World War I, sugar prices spiked. Pepsi relied heavily on sugar for their formula. The cost increases destroyed their business model. In 1923, Caleb Bradham declared bankruptcy and sold the Pepsi trademark. The brand changed hands several times over the next decade. Pepsi was basically dead. Coca-Cola had won without even trying. But Pepsi got lucky. In 1931, a businessman named Charles Guth bought Pepsi. Charles owned a candy company and a chain of pharmacies. He'd been buying Coca-Cola syrup to sell at his soda fountains. He asked get Coca-Cola for a discount. They refused. Charles was so angry that he decided to replace Coca-Cola with Pepsi in all his stores. This decision changed everything, but Pepsi still had problems. Nobody was buying it. The taste wasn't great, and the brand had a terrible reputation from the bankruptcy. Charles made a radical decision. Instead of trying to compete with Coca-Cola in quality or taste, he'd compete on price. In 1934, Pepsi started selling 12-ounce bottles for the same price that Coca-Cola charged for 6-ounce bottles. Twice as much soda for the same price. Pepsi created a radio jingle that became one of the most successful ads in history. Pepsi-Cola hits the spot. 12 full ounces. That's a lot. Twice as much for a nickel. 2. Pepsi-Cola is the drink for you. This jingle was genius. Simple, catchy, and it directly compared Pepsi to Coca-Cola. It told consumers exactly why they should buy Pepsi. More for your money. The jingle was translated into 55 languages and became the first advertising jingle played on national radio. Pepsi's sales exploded. By 1936, Pepsi had doubled their profits. The value strategy worked during the Great Depression. People wanted to stretch every dollar. Getting twice as much soda made Pepsi an easy choice, but the value positioning created a problem that would haunt Pepsi for decades. Pepsi became known as the cheap soda, the poor person's drink. Coca-Cola drinkers looked down on Pepsi drinkers. Coca-Cola was premium. Pepsi was discount. This class distinction became embedded in American culture. Coca-Cola was sophisticated and aspirational. Pepsi was practical and lower class. Pepsi hated this reputation but couldn't escape it. Through the 1940s and 50s, Coca-Cola dominated. They had better distribution, more money for advertising, and a superior brand image. Coca-Cola became intertwined with American identity. During World War II, Coca-Cola sent bottling plants to war zones so American soldiers could have Coke. This wasn't just good PR. It created lifelong Coca-Cola drinkers among millions of servicemen. After the war, those soldiers came home and kept drinking Coke. Coca-Cola became associated with patriotism, American values, and the good life. Pepsi tried to compete but struggled. Their value positioning made it hard to charge premium prices. They couldn't afford the same level of advertising as Coca-Cola. They were losing badly. By 1950, Coca-Cola had about 60% of the soft drink market. Pepsi had maybe 15%. The gap seemed insurmountable. Pepsi needed a new strategy. They couldn't win on price alone. They needed to change how people thought about Pepsi. In 1963, Pepsi launched a campaign that would define their brand for generations, the Pepsi generation. The campaign targeted young people. Instead of competing with Coca-Cola on tradition and heritage, Pepsi positioned themselves as the choice of youth. Coca-Cola was for your parents. Pepsi was for you. The ads showed young, attractive people having fun, playing sports, going to parties, living exciting lives, all while drinking Pepsi. This was brilliant. Coca-Cola's strength was tradition. They'd been around since 1886. They were part of American history. Pepsi turned this strength into a weakness. Old versus new, past versus future. Your parents' generation versus your generation. Young people wanted to differentiate themselves from their parents. Drinking Pepsi became a small act of rebellion. It was a way to signal you were young, modern, and different. The Pepsi Generation campaign slowly changed Pepsi's image. They were no longer just the cheap alternative. They were the cool alternative. Sales started growing. Pepsi gained market share throughout the 1960s, but they were still behind Coca-Cola. They needed something bigger, something that would prove Pepsi was actually better than Coke, not just cheaper or cooler. In 1975, Pepsi launched the Pepsi Challenge. This was marketing genius. They set up booths in malls and shopping centers. People would taste two unmarked cups of cola. One was Pepsi, one was Coca-Cola. After tasting both, people voted for which one they preferred. More than half chose Pepsi. Pepsi filmed these blind taste tests and turned them into TV commercials. The message was clear. When people don't know which is which, they prefer Pepsi. Coca-Cola's superiority is just brand loyalty, not actual taste. The Pepsi Challenge was devastating to Coca-Cola. It put them on the defensive. Coca-Cola drinkers started questioning their choice. Maybe they only preferred Coke because of the brand, not the taste. The challenge was effective because it seemed objective. It wasn't Pepsi making claims. It was regular people in blind tests choosing Pepsi. This was the first time anyone had used blind taste tests as a major marketing campaign. It changed advertising forever. Coca-Cola was furious. They tried to discredit the Pepsi Challenge. They claimed the tests were rigged. They said Pepsi cheated by serving their soda colder. They argued that in blind sips, people naturally prefer sweeter drinks, but that doesn't mean they'd want to drink a whole bottle. Some of these criticisms were valid. The Pepsi Challenge was designed to favor Pepsi, but it didn't matter. The perception damage was done. Pepsi was winning the narrative. Through the late 1970s and early 1980s, Pepsi kept gaining market share. By 1983, Pepsi overtook Coca-Cola in supermarket sales. Pepsi was actually outselling Coke in stores. Coca-Cola still led in overall sales because they dominated restaurants and vending machines. But the supermarket numbers terrified Coca-Cola. Pepsi was winning where consumers had a real choice. Coca-Cola's leadership panicked. They'd been losing market share for years. The Pepsi Challenge had damaged their brand. Young people preferred Pepsi. Something had to change. They started doing their own taste tests, and they found something shocking. In blind tests, Coca-Cola's own research showed people preferred Pepsi. Even Coca-Cola drinkers preferred Pepsi in blind sips. This was devastating. Maybe Pepsi was right. Maybe Pepsi did taste better. Coca-Cola decided to do the unthinkable. They would change their formula. The formula that had been secret for 99 years. The taste that defined Coca-Cola. They spent 4 years and $4 million developing a new formula. They called it New Coke. New Coke was sweeter, more like Pepsi. They tested it extensively. In blind taste tests, people preferred New Coke to both Old Coke and Pepsi. The data said this would work. On paper, New Coke was going to save Coca. On April 23, 1985, Coca-Cola held a press conference at Lincoln Center in New York. They announced they were discontinuing original Coca-Cola and replacing it with New Coke. The company chairman said it was the surest move the company had ever made. They expected people to love it. After all, the taste tests were overwhelmingly positive. What could go wrong? Everything went wrong. The American public revolted. People were furious. Coca-Cola changed their formula. This was an American institution. You don't change something that's been the same for 99 years. People felt betrayed. They felt like Coca-Cola had taken something away from them. The backlash was immediate and intense. Coca-Cola's phone lines were flooded with angry calls. They received 400,000 angry letters. People compared the change to trampling the American flag. Some people started hoarding old Coke. They bought cases and stockpiled them. A few people tried to sell old Coke at inflated prices. There were protests. People dumped New Coke in the streets. A man in San Antonio drove his car loaded with New Coke into a lake. A group called Old Cola Drinkers of America formed to demand Coca-Cola bring back the original formula. The backlash was so severe that psychiatrists said people were experiencing genuine grief and loss. Pepsi celebrated. They declared victory. They took out full-page newspaper ads saying after 87 years of going at it eyeball to eyeball, the other guy just blinked. Pepsi employees got the day off to celebrate. This was Pepsi's moment. Coca-Cola had basically admitted defeat by changing their formula to be more like Pepsi. Pepsi had won the cola wars, or so they thought. But then something unexpected happened. The anger at New Coke kept growing. Coca-Cola's sales dropped. New Coke was doing terribly, despite the positive taste tests. Coca-Cola realized they'd made a catastrophic mistake. They hadn't understood what Coca-Cola meant to people. It wasn't just about taste. It was about tradition, nostalgia, and identity. People didn't want a better tasting Coke. They wanted their Coke. The one they grew up with. The one that reminded them of childhood summers and family gatherings. On July 11th, 1985, just 79 days after launching New Coke, Coca-Cola announced they were bringing back the original formula. They'd call it Coca-Cola Classic. The announcement was made at a press conference where the company president got choked up with emotion. He said, "We have heard you." The return of original Coke was treated like a major news event. ABC interrupted programming to announce it. Peter Jennings broke into General Hospital to tell viewers Coca-Cola Classic was coming back. This was bigger than news. This was cultural. The American public rejoiced. People celebrated in the streets. Coca-Cola's phone lines received 31,600 calls in one day. All positive. Senator David Pryor of Arkansas called the return of original Coke a meaningful moment in U.S. history. This sounds ridiculous now, but at the time, people were genuinely emotional about it. Coca-Cola had become so embedded in American culture that changing it felt like an attack on America itself. New Coke continued to exist alongside Coca-Cola Classic for a while, but nobody bought it. It was quietly discontinued in 2002. The whole New Coke disaster is studied in business schools as one of the worst marketing failures in history. But here's the twist. Some people think it was actually a secret success. After the New Coke controversy, Coca-Cola Classic became more popular than ever. Sales soared. Coca-Cola regained market share. They'd lost to Pepsi. By reminding people how much they loved original Coke, the whole fiasco actually strengthened Coca-Cola's brand. There's a conspiracy theory that Coca-Cola planned the whole thing. That New Coke was always meant to fail. They'd bring it back after a few months, creating massive publicity and renewed appreciation for original Coke. Coca-Cola has always denied this. They insist New Coke was a genuine mistake. But the theory persists because the outcome was so beneficial for Coca-Cola. Whether accident or genius, the New Coke saga became the defining moment of the Cola Wars. Pepsi was stunned. They'd celebrated too early. The New Coke disaster had actually made Coca-Cola stronger, not weaker. People were drinking more Coke than before. Pepsi's victory had turned into defeat. They needed a new strategy. They doubled down on celebrity endorsements and youth marketing. Through the 1980s, Pepsi signed massive deals with the biggest stars in the world. In 1983, Pepsi signed Michael Jackson for $5 million. This was the largest celebrity endorsement deal in history at the time. Michael was the biggest star on the planet. Thriller was dominating the charts. Everyone loved Michael Jackson. Pepsi created commercials featuring Michael, performing with his brothers. During the filming of one commercial in 1984, Michael's hair caught on fire from pyrotechnics. He was seriously burned and needed surgery. The incident was shocking and got massive media coverage. Ironically, this made the Pepsi ads even more talked about. Pepsi also signed Madonna, Tina Turner, Lionel Richie, and later, Britney Spears and Beyonce. They were building a strategy around music and youth culture. Pepsi wasn't just a drink. It was part of the lifestyle of young, cool people who listened to the hottest music. Coca-Cola responded with their own celebrity endorsements. But Pepsi usually got bigger stars and created more memorable campaigns. The advertising war reached absurd levels in the late 1980s and 1990s. Both companies spent hundreds of millions on advertising annually. They competed for Super Bowl ad slots, which became some of the most expensive and most watched commercials in the world. Pepsi's ads were usually edgier and more youthful. Coca-Cola's ads emphasized tradition, family, and American values. The contrast in styles reflected their different brand positions. Pepsi made an audacious move in the 1990s. They literally went to space. In 1996, Pepsi paid to have a cosmonauts drink Pepsi on the Russian space station Mir. They filmed it for commercials. Pepsi claimed to be the first soft drink consumed in space. This sounds like a joke, but it actually happened. The space race had evolved into the Cola Wars, extending into orbit. The absurdity showed how far both companies would go for a marketing advantage. The rivalry also turned criminal. In 2006, 3 people tried to sell Coca-Cola secret formula and new product plans to Pepsi. Contacted Pepsi, offering confidential Coca-Cola documents for money. This was corporate espionage, and Pepsi immediately reported it to Coca-Cola and law enforcement. The FBI set up a sting operation. The criminals were arrested when they tried to complete the sale. They went to prison. Pepsi's decision to report the espionage, rather than exploit it, was seen as honorable. Even in their intense rivalry, there were lines they wouldn't cross. The Cola Wars went global. Both companies fought for dominance in every country. They'd offer retailers exclusive deals. They'd sponsor local events and sports teams. They'd adapt their marketing to local cultures. In India, both companies spent millions trying to win the market. In China, both fought for the loyalty of 1 billion potential consumers. The competition was worldwide. Wherever humans lived, Coca-Cola and Pepsi were fighting for their business. The restaurant wars were particularly intense. Both companies competed viciously for contracts with fast food chains. Pepsi won McDonald's 4 years before losing them to Coca-Cola in a huge blow. Coca-Cola locked up deals with many major chains, but Pepsi owned several restaurant chains themselves. They bought Taco Bell, KFC, and Pizza Hut in the 1980s. This guaranteed outlets for Pepsi and denied them to Coca-Cola. It was strategic warfare using restaurant acquisitions. Health concerns started affecting both companies in the 2000s. People became more worried about obesity, diabetes, and the health effects of sugar. Soda consumption in America peaked around 2000 and then started declining. Both Coca-Cola and Pepsi faced criticism for contributing to health problems. They responded by introducing diet sodas, zero-sugar options, and diversifying into water, juice, and sports drinks. The Cola Wars expanded into battles over every beverage category. Coca-Cola bought brands like the Sunny Water, Powerade, and Vitama. Pepsi bought Gatorade and Tropicana. Both companies transformed from soda makers into total beverage companies. They still fought over cola, but that was just one battle in a broader war for beverage dominance. Today, less than 30% of Coca-Cola's revenue comes from Coca-Cola soda. The rest is from other drinks. The same is true for Pepsi. The Cola Wars evolved into the beverage wars. Social media created new battlegrounds. Both companies invested heavily in digital marketing, influencer partnerships, and viral campaigns. They fought for trending topics on Twitter, engagement on Instagram, and views on YouTube. The weapons changed, but the war continued. Every new platform and technology became another arena for competition. The rivalry shaped both companies' identities. Coca-Cola defines itself as the classic, traditional choice. The real thing, authentic, timeless. Pepsi defines itself as the challenger, the choice of the new generation. Bold, innovative, different. These identities were forged through a century of competition. Without Pepsi, Coca-Cola might have become complacent. Without Coca-Cola, Pepsi might have never pushed so hard to differentiate itself. The economic impact of this rivalry is staggering. Together, Coca-Cola and Pepsi are worth over $400 billion. They employ hundreds of thousands of people. They've created entire industries. The advertising campaigns they pioneered changed marketing forever. The celebrity endorsement model they perfected is now standard across industries. The blind taste test strategy Pepsi used has been copied thousands of times. Their competition drove innovation in bottling, distribution, vending machines, and packaging. The cultural impact is equally significant. Coke versus Pepsi became shorthand for consumer choice and brand loyalty. People genuinely identify with one or the other. Families have Coke families and Pepsi families. Restaurants declaring whether they serve Coke or Pepsi matters to customers. This level of brand loyalty is rare, and it was built through decades of marketing warfare. The rivalry also demonstrates the power of perception over reality. In blind taste tests, most people can't reliably distinguish Coke from Pepsi. The differences are subtle, but people believe they taste different and have strong preferences. This shows how much marketing influences perception. Brand identity matters more than the actual product. The cola wars were never really about which soda tastes better. They were about which brand made you feel better about yourself. Looking at where both companies are today, the war continues, but it's less intense than the peak years. Coca-Cola remains the larger company with higher market capitalization and global sales. Pepsi is close behind and arguably more diversified. Both are facing similar challenges: declining soda consumption, health concerns, competition from new beverage startups, climate change affecting water access. They're no longer just fighting each other. They're fighting changing consumer preferences and social trends. But the rivalry remains part of both companies' DNA. They still compete for restaurant contracts, shelf space, advertising dominance, and cultural relevance. They still launch products specifically to counter each other. When one introduces a new flavor or marketing campaign, the other responds. The tactics have evolved, but the fundamental competition endures. A century later, the war that started with two pharmacists' patent medicines continues. The Coca-Cola versus Pepsi war is the longest and most influential rivalry in business history. For over a century, these two companies have fought for dominance using every weapon in the marketing arsenal: celebrity endorsements, blind taste tests, corporate espionage, space stunts, and the most expensive advertising campaigns ever created. They literally changed their formulas, caused riots, went to space, and reshaped American culture. This wasn't just about selling soda. It was about defining what it meant to be American: young, traditional, or rebellious. The rivalry created modern marketing. It proved that perception matters more than reality. It showed that competition drives innovation, and that having a rival makes you better. Coca-Cola and Pepsi needed each other. They pushed each other to constantly improve, constantly market, constantly fight for every customer. The competition gave us some of the most memorable advertising in history, created billion-dollar celebrity endorsement industries, and made two brown fizzy drinks into global cultural icons. Today, both companies face new challenges that have nothing to do with each other, but the rivalry that defined them continues. Because after fighting for over a century, neither company knows how to exist without the other. They're locked in eternal combat, forever trying to prove they're better. And honestly, that's exactly what made them both so successful. The war that involves spies, space shuttles, and changing an entire generation's taste is far from over. It's just evolving into its next phase, and we're all still choosing sides, whether we realize it or not. Click the next video to discover how McDonald's and Burger King have been at war for decades, and why one company literally stalks the other by opening restaurants right next door.